those of you who followed this channel for some time know that I work in marketing. So I'm very, very big on all sort of things, digital marketing skills, marketing strategy, anything marketing, you name it. I'm sort of very into it. And I've talked about GDPR before, and I've also talked about data because, again, in the run up to Brexit, I was constantly talking about how if our government is intending to diverge from European standards and regulations, what happens if it diverges from GDPR? Because there's already been a legal agreement called Steinman's 2, which effectively has put a digital trade barrier between Europe and the US. And potentially, if we were to change this, as well, of course, it looks like we are heading towards some sort of change, then it looks like that barrier will now just go through the channel and cut us off, which will have huge implications for companies trying to do business with Europe. Because in Europe and under GDPR, if your company who you're doing business with doesn't follow GDPR rules, you could be in for a world of hurt. And even if you were a company who was handling like data from Europe, or maybe you had clients in Europe, their data or customer data in Europe, or you were a marketing firm and you were handling Europeans' data, doing marketing campaigns in Europe, this will have huge complications for you. Huge, not just for if you work in marketing, all type of data. If you even handle any sort of private information data, this will be a huge detriment, and once again make the UK massively uncompetitive in its closest market. But we are seeing once again of the government trying to diverge, and it's going to go horribly wrong because, like I say, we've just got this data adequacy agreement with the EU, which has stopped that, and now it's putting forward planned changes for GDPR, which are potentially could just destroy that agreement outright, which is going to have huge consequences. So before we do go jumping into that, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all the people who do support the channel that way. So let's jump into this then. This comes from Wired. The title is, "The UK thinks it can fix GDPR. It's wrong." The UK has left the European Union. It's left the single market, and now it wants to leave behind the rules that require companies to protect your personal data. The European Union's General Data Protection Regulation has its flaws, as any middle manager required to rework processes and fill out paperwork and data handling ahead of its implementation back in May of 2018 knows all too well. And trust me, I know that all too well myself. This paperwork was signed out by Oliver Dowden, the UK's cultural secretary who oversees the country's digital policies. In a Telegraph interview announcing that the UK would diverge from key parts of GDPR last week, the government announced its proposed choice of the new head of the new UK's data regulator, the Information Commissioner Office at the same time, but the potential GDPR changes got the most attention. Among those targeting for the changes were the, quote, pointless bureaucracy, box ticking, and red tape. The GDPR is by no means perfect, and charitably, you could see the UK trying to take a lead in trying to fix some of these issues, says Lillian Edwards, Professor of Law and Innovation and Society at Newcastle University. For instance, there's been a lack of enforcement action from data protection bodies across Europe. Sadly, this is almost certainly a very futile publicity-seeking effort, Edwards says of the UK's naysaying efforts. In practice, the UK plans to try and fix GDPR, which are very currently and extremely high level and vague, and could put it into a collision course with the European Union. The moves designed to try and stimulate new businesses could, in fact, bring an end to existing data sharing deals, and the UK's plan to, quote, set world-leading gold standards regarding data regulation, which protects privacy. But does so in it's a very light touch way as possible, is completely misguided. It simply won't work, experts say. God knows there are some areas of privacy law and data protection regulation we could tweak or even better for everyone involved, says Heather Burns, the policy manager at Open Rights Group, a UK campaign group protecting digital privacy. But Burns says the UK plans aren't a good faith attempt to try and find a third way to solve these data issues. This is deregulating privacy laws and data protection safeguards in the commercial interests of industry. Burns believes that everyone in the UK is trying to liberalise access to data to try and generate a broader market for it. The British government's vision is to create a market of applications that watch what you're saying and doing. Its privacy rights and safeguards are a major obstacle to that. Worst of all, Burns believes that it's fundamentally unachievable. It's the classic Brexit cakeism, she explains. It's having your cake and eating it too. The UK has spent the last several months trying to achieve a data adequacy with the European Union, which has very stringent rules on whether data its users can go and do. It is managed to come to sort of an agreement of its 4-year adequacy deal in late last June. The concept behind the Data Adequacy Partnership is to prevent organizations having to introduce specific measures that show compliance to data rules by themselves, which the government calls costly. To share personal data instead, it's given that signatories to adequacy partnerships are trustworthy and able to handle personal data safely. Alongside the European Union, the UK has adequacy partnerships with countries such as New Zealand, Japan, and Canada, and wants to do more deals with other countries in the future. Yet, each deal it does potentially weakens the adherence to the pre-existing data adequacy agreements, including that with the EU, many of whose members have raised concerns about the risk of the UK diverging from those very agreements, potentially imperiling EU users' data. We are talking here about a fundamental right of EU citizens that we have a duty to protect, said Vera Jokosta, the EU Vice President for Values and Transparency, in late last June when the UK EU data was announced. This is why we will have significant safeguards. If anything changes on the UK side, we will intervene. The UK's agreement with the EU contains a sunset clause or a defined end date, which is unusual and is one of the sources says was designed by the EU to head off the fear of anxiety of what the UK appears to be doing. The European Union may very well find itself having to intervene earlier than 2025 when the agreement comes to an end, given the UK's announced plans. Take the countries the UK says it were on its target list for signing new adequacy agreements. They include the United States, South Korea, Singapore, Dubai, Colombia, and Australia. The United States data handling practices have long been an issue for the European Union and are subject of repeated ongoing legislative battles. As we said earlier, the Steimans and Steimans 2 cases, where the Australian lawyer Max Stearmans fought for the right for his data to remain protected under European data rules when transferred to the United States. When the UK was inside that tent because of how the European project has gone, there was all kinds of interesting that the UK-US data transfer stuff would be worried about, says John Ryan, a senior fellow at the Irish Civil Council for Civil Liberties, an independent lobby group. Now they're outside of the tent, there's an issue for companies handling data that operate within the European Union. And while adequacy might be a great UK controller doing business with a third country, it does significantly change the rules for the ultimate data controller in the EU or solve an issue of onward transference of countries not adequate from the perspective of the EU, says Daniel Studbeck, the consul at the Shift Technology, a Paris-based AI insurance optimization company. Essentially, every time the UK brokers a new deal with a third country, it's because it is now able to be outside of the EU, and it increases the likelihood of its own agreement the EU is nullified. This free flow of data between the UK, EU, and the US is obviously an issue, Ryan says. And the issue is amplified by the way of the UK, and Dowden even presents itself. Now we have left the EU, I am determined to seize the opportunity by developing a world-leading data policy that will deliver a Brexit dividend for individuals and businesses across the UK, he said. It means reforming our own data laws so they're based on common sense, not box ticking. Again, we've heard this type of rhetoric, I don't know how many times regarding Brexit. The decision to diverge from European standards is not an unsurprising one. One European insider told Wired, given the broader sweep of geopolitics in post-Brexit Britain, and smaller clues such as the use of personal identifiable information, a US term, rather than personal data, a European one. In an official document, it was also noted by those outside the UK that the job advert is for the new Information Commissioner, focused more on helping businesses to protect personal data. John Edwards, the proposed candidate for the Information Commissioner job, said that he looked forward to the challenge of steering the organisation and the British economy into a position of international leadership in safe and trusted use of data for the benefit of all. The lack of acknowledgement of personal data protection may be a concern for individuals, but what Oliver Dowden calls common sense is seen by absurd as others. This is much bigger than data protection, said Ryan. Can the UK make itself a Singapore of Europe? Can someone, say, gobble up all the service market from Europe by lowering regulatory standards? A European Union source points out that is very unlikely, but the UK's currency mooted plans of Singapore does, in fact, have a reasonable data protection framework. If the UK does so, and pursuing more customers outside the EU, it looks very likely to lose its biggest customer, the EU itself. The free flow of data to the European Union is worth over £85 billion to the UK. And according to the UK government's own figures, this is equivalent to 13% of all its global trade. The European Commission has signalled that if it deviates from the data protection standards and it's supposed to pay lip service to, then adequacy agreement is basically just going to fizzle out, says Ryan. It is going to threaten the visibility of all digital services and in industries in the UK. It is also curiously out of step of decision by the UK, says Burns. It was almost surreal when everyone from the United States to China is moving towards greater protections and privacy. It's just that the UK is moving a direction to just let's scrap all that, let's get rid of it, let's have fun with all the data. A notion that a nation of over 70 million people can create a third way between China, the US, and Europe is quite frankly delusional. Brussels are more likely to see it that way too. While Dowden and the UK government may present their plan as revolutionary, the honey trap will see companies and countries swarm in to take advantage. Pragmatism is likely to win out. When getting rid of cookie banners on websites may seem like a saving grace, although it is already being tackled by the European Union's e-privacy directive, the reality is that most companies will stick to the broader, stricter standards established by the European Union. Following the stricter rules is likely to mean a company is well covered in all locations rather than following multiple rules in different jurisdictions. Multinational firms, which don't just mean big tech giants, but almost any firm that sells into the EU abroad, will always prefer to have one set of rules or laws to follow. Almost no matter what they are, the EU and GDPR standard is not only mediated when contracting with the EU, but increasingly a global standard, said Edwards. What the European Union believes is likely to happen, Wide understands, is an absence of institutional knowledge about data protection within the UK government. Shock horror. The UK government doesn't know anything about the EU? God blimey, governor. Say it so. While the UK, within the UK government, and coupled with a very strong anti-European stance within the Conservative Party, means that the description appears to be far more ideological rather than rooted in technical consideration of user benefits. The UK is treading a very fine line with all this nonsense, said one EU source told Wired. I don't think much thought has actually gone into this. So, as we've said before, that has potential huge ramifications. Huge ramifications. 13% of our GDP, of our data GDP, goes to the European Union. That is just data. That's nothing out of manufacturing. If it's digital marketing, everything to do with data, that's 13%. And our government, in all its brilliance, seems to want to tear that up. I've said before, and said this would very much likely happen, that because we've got a very, very anti-EU government, we see this rhetoric all the time. Whether they will act on it is, of course, another issue. And if they do decide to act on it, well, they're risking 13% of our GDP with Europe. That is going to have huge, huge implications on this country and its economy. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next time.